Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Marr again, and this is part 3 of our self-portrait series of videos. Um, as of the last class, or at least the last video, we were at the point where you had all your contour lines and your outlines down on your paper, very, very lightly. You used the eraser as little as possible, and you didn't carve into the surface of the paper. Those two things were very important because they leave marks later down the road. Today we're focusing on blocking in values. Okay, so we've talked a lot about value. This is a value chart. Um, we're going to ultimately be matching the values on this chart with the values in the picture. And what I want you to be aware of before you even start is that there's very little in this picture that's actually white. Okay, this actually is 10% black right here on the chart. It might look white on the video. Um, and the point of these little holes is so that you can actually take and put your chart up here and see where things fall. And if you squint, you want to get generally the same value. Okay, so that's what we're shooting for. Like in that shadow, it might be more like this value. And sometimes you perceive that something is a certain darkness or lightness, and it isn't true. So it helps to have the chart to just test what you're doing. All right, so aside from that, things that we're going to use. Today we are only using vine charcoal, or willow, sometimes it's called. There's my hand. There it is. And the willow charcoal leaves a very soft mark. Compressed charcoal, the square charcoal, and the pencils, they come in different softnesses, 2B, 4B, 6B pencils. We'll get to that down the road. But for right now, we're not using the square one that's in your kit. You're only using the vine charcoal, and they're very forgiving. They erase well, more so than the other stuff. So that's where we're going to start. Okay. Now, people ask me specifically, where do we start? It doesn't really matter all that much, but you don't want to micromanage. What we're doing today is we're blocking out our entire composition to get lights and darks. Now, willow will come and it'll be kind of arced. So you want to have a piece of scrap paper around. See the mark that made? That's because the shape of this is not that dramatically, is like this, and it's only hitting here and there. So you want to take and be aware of that. And you're not going to use the tip of it like a pencil. You're going to use the side, and you can do it at an angle, but kind of rub it on a piece of paper until you get a nice flat line that you're happy with. So now if you think about this, it's kind of that shape. The other thing is if you have a big area, you can flatten it so that you don't get that arc anymore. It just sort of flattens out. So have a piece of paper handy. The nice thing about that too is if you have a lot of dust, you can take a paintbrush or you can take your fingers and just go in where you see a shadow and use your finger and kind of put in a soft shadow that way too. Okay. Because first of all, I have to tell you, I do a lot more demoing at the beginning, and I'm hoping these videos will solve this problem. As people start working, I tend to run around the room more and help people and never finish. In the first stage, and this is only the way I do it, lots of different artists do these different ways. So this is, just one way. I tend to rub the first layer when I'm doing the blocking, and then I build up with other layers, but I don't rub them away. So understand this is just how we're going to block it in. Okay. This will dissipate. Like we can smooth it out. We know that there's a little bit of a shadow line here. And the other important thing to talk about right now, up until this point, you've done line, you've done contour line, you've done outline. We are going to just get away from line, and now you're going to work with blocks of value and ranges and gradations of value, and your edges are going to do the work that a line would normally do. So you're not going to outline the nose, okay? You're going to have what we call implied edges. And you might draw it down here to start a little bit, but generally you're doing shapes. And you'll know where the nose is because, you know, you're going to take this and there'll be a shadowy area on the side of the nose and a highlight on the nose, and the difference between them, that contrast, is going to determine, like this might have a shadow that comes all the way down in here. Seems very dark. And keep in mind, the darkest you can get with these vines isn't as dark as we're going to get once we start going in with pencil and compressed charcoal. So don't worry about that. It's going to look very soft, and eventually we're going to do things that are darker, and it won't seem funny to you at all when the time comes. So you just have to kind of trust me on that one for a little bit. We know that there's a little bit of shadow where that cloth is up against the face, and that there's shadow coming all the way down here. Different degrees. It gets darker in that little spot right there. There's shadow mapping the bottom of the chin. Definitely darker shadow under the chin. She's got like a little crease in her neck there. But this whole area has a degree of shadow to it. So it's okay to do it at that angle. There's definite shadow on the side of the cheek down in here to different degrees, and you can always erase vine charcoal too. So you just kind of lay that in. I put some lines here where there's different degrees of shadow. You can, I don't know if you can see them on the camera, but there's little very light lines for me to use as a map. Okay, now that looks silly, obviously, right? But we're going to go back in and think about the contour, the little round ball of the chin there. Okay, and it comes up here. This is not white. It's a lighter shade of gray. Okay, we're going to get rid of any line. I probably put in more line there than I should have, but it's just the first layer, so we're not going to worry about that right now. There's more shadow. We can get flatter in here too. So there's another shadow that falls in here and gets lighter as it gets towards the lips. Meets in with these shadows here. Gets darker on this side as it rolls around. You can map out the mouth. Like there's very dark here. Now this is not going to be very dark when I'm done with it in this stage of the game. It will be down the road. But let's just map where the mouth is so we don't lose it. And you can see just slightly, there's a little bit of her tongue that's a little bit lighter there. So the bottom line is we're using the vine charcoal to just sort of block out the shapes to begin with. You want to keep the shape as close to reality as you can, but if it goes off a little bit, as long as you're aware of it, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I would use a sort of rounded contour stroke on the cheek. If it is rounded, then make it rounded. Down here. And we're going to layer and layer. You need to make sure you're using a flat side of this. You can mark in the hair a little bit. The shadows by the eyes, definitely the line of the eye. If you do see a line, you can make a line, but in most cases, it's implied edges that are showing the difference between one thing and another. All right, we're not doing any fine tuning at this point. We're just blocking in values. This gets a little lighter, so I'm just pushing a little less out here. Okay. This has some more shadow in here. So I don't want to keep you guys while I do an entire drawing. But that's enough to give you an idea of the fact that you're just quickly, probably not as quickly as I do it because I'm a little more confident at it, but you're mapping that out just with darks and lights as best you can. If you feel like you got too dark, take the eraser and like along here, there's going to be an implied edge. My grass here is darker than the cheek there. So you can map in a dark if you want, and that's going to be an implied edge around the ear too. Now here I'm not going to, I want to keep a different texture, so I'm not going to smudge anything out here. But just know that's an implied edge. You don't need a pencil outline because the difference between the grass and the baby is doing the job itself. Okay, this coming that way. And then let's give her ear a little bit of tone at this point. If there's a strong highlight on this edge of this cheek, I can go back in here using my eraser, like the side of my eraser, not so much a line, although there are points where you would use a line. You can go in and you can lighten it very easily and get a wider range there. You can take that a little softer. And go in, go back that way. Okay, maybe on that cheek, I want to do the same thing. So you're playing with your lights, your middle tones, and your darks until it starts to form, until you start to get the feeling of where the light's hitting it the most. It becomes more three-dimensional because of the fact that those darknesses and lightnesses imply that light is wrapping around the object to different degrees. Now, I have another one that we started in class. Some of you have been watching me in class do this, depending on what day you're in school. But it basically, same deal. Okay, I didn't do the mouth as much in this one. This is what you're shooting for this week. You want to block in all your colors, or all your values, no colors, across your page and get them as close to the value they should be as possible. There's going to be other layers that we do on top. I tend to micromanage probably more than I should in the later layers. But I want to show you different possibilities in the next video of where you can go from here. In the cloth here, it's puffy. You can use that to determine the shape, okay, or the form, but also implying edges against the baby. Some of this we'll do more of in the next video. The other tool, though, that we haven't talked about is a stump. This is just rolled up paper with a point. Sometimes they have a point at one end, sometimes two. It gets into places that your fingers are too big to get into. So you can make this a little more subtle just by going in with a stump. Okay. These are not the finished values, but it at least maps it out on the page for you. Okay. I just saw somewhere I wanted to use the eraser and I've already lost where that is. Okay. Oh, it was down here. Maybe we'll make this a little more three-dimensional by playing up the highlights. Okay. So this is video 3, blocking out the values. This is your goal for the next stage of the project, is just to get the values blocked out on your page. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I can't wait to see what you come up with. Bye now.